Guys, ready for the boss, the Helltide Commander. Alright, we're gonna do this solo. Alright, solo. No one here. Look at that. Legit soloed that in like, what, a second? Alright guys, let's go over this insanity of a build that was actually accidentally discovered, and this build is just crazy good. It might get nerfed pretty soon, so play it maybe while you can. So, what makes this build OP, and how is it doing just astronomical, like just unreal numbers in terms of damage? How come it's doing so much? So to explain this really quick, the main thing that is actually causing this to work is one of the newer seasonal powers, and that is going to be Flowing Veins. It increases your damage over time to enemies that are moving or affected by a vampiric curse. What works with this that's really good is actually Fireball, and because it's activating multiple times, it actually will proc a huge amount of like crazy amount of damage that normally you would never be able to get, and that's what's cool with the seasonal powers. So you'll notice it doesn't seem like a damage over time build, right? The things are just melting instantly. So what's causing that? So what's actually causing that is actually one of the upgrades on Fireball. There's something called Greater Fireball. Well, it deals in damage a percent of the burning damage that we've applied to enemies as direct damage. So it applies direct damage from the burn damage. So we actually do scale damage over time as well as fire like burn damage, as well as just getting any damage and core skills. There's a lot of like multipliers hidden in specifically core skills plus dots that actually give you double value. And another thing that makes this build super good is any amount of bonus fire damage basically gets tripled when we get bonus percent to non-physical, which you'll see in the Paragon board. So that's why Sorceress this season is absolutely insane across the board with a lot of different builds. But this build was accidentally discovered because I just got a drop from an uber unique boss, and I decided just to throw it on, and I was just looking at the numbers. I'm like, okay, this doesn't seem right. This just seems like absolutely crazy. And what's causing this is because Fireball will actually bounce multiple times. You're getting the bonus multiple times because you get additional dot damage when you actually use your abilities. All your abilities will apply Firebolt. So Firebolt on the enchant will actually give you additional damage over time that is going to be burn damage, and it's going to kind of consume it in a way, and that's why, again, you don't really see it being a dot build. It just kind of melts things very, very fast. So that's essentially how it works. So another thing I want to mention, this is going to be the min-max one. I figured it was kind of pointless to show off the build in terms of exactly what I was running, because I did happen to get a item over here, and you do not need this item, and in fact, I actually think it's bad. It's just, at the moment, it's the best in slot for me. But the Staff of the Endless Rage makes it so every third cast of Fireball gets additional damage, and it launches multiple Fireballs. And while that does sound kind of cool, if you want to, for some of the Uber bosses, perhaps this could be an okay addition. And the reason why is because you can get these fireballs to basically overlap. But for the most part, I would say it's unnecessary because most of the targets in this game are not large enough. But if you're doing world bosses or just any of the Uber bosses, I actually think that it can actually be quite good because you can maybe get the overlap and actually hit maybe the same boss 9 times. And that's what essentially is doing just the crazy, crazy damage. So if you're just playing and you're not doing Uber bosses, you actually can get way more damage because the target is not wide enough, if that makes any sense. The reason why it's so good against bosses is because the target is so big that these overlaps are just getting just insane damage. But you still get some overlap even without the unique, which is the Staff of the Endless Rage. So now that we got all that out of the way, let's go ahead and hop right into like the min-max version. Obviously, you don't have to have anything with the exception of one unique, and that is going to be the Gloves of the Illuminator. So what this does is it makes it so Fireball actually bounces. You don't need the triple Fireball, you just need this, and the reason why is because it's going to apply that damage over time and tick that damage multiple times, and that's what makes it so good. On average though, you will maybe hit the same enemy 2 times. I would not expect to have the same enemy hit like 3+ times, unless it's a very big target or the same target kind of moves along. So don't expect to hit the target more than twice, but that's more than enough. So on top of that, what makes it super powerful is if any of the smaller enemies die, if there's an elite, what happens is because we have the Fireball enchantment, and the Fireball enchantment is going to deal 50% less damage of the base Fireball, but what it does do is it then applies the Fireball again. So that's why again, it's doing just crazy amounts of damage. Okay, so now that we get the basic concepts of it, let's go ahead and go over the skills and kind of how we use them. So basically, it's a pretty easy build. You literally spam Fireball for the damage. You can activate your Frost Nova if anything goes wrong. You have double shields over here, so Flame Shield, Ice Armor. If you want to group up enemies, Inferno, and then we just have Teleport. Nothing special. Most Sorceress builds are always running like double shields, Teleport. That's kind of the bread and butter. And then you also run your Frost Nova. But we don't actually need Frost Nova for vulnerability. We're actually going to be applying it with one of the Vampiric powers. So this build is super simple in terms of like managing certain things. Ideally though, you don't want to be like kissing the enemy in terms of distance. Be a little bit further away, and that is essentially what's going to get the bounces to happen multiple times on the same enemy. So you're kind of looking at just a small distance in front of you, I would say. Like for example, if we were to kind of like look at where our character is, maybe like 5 or 6 character models like away, that would be kind of the good reference point for where you'd want to actually use your Fireball. But for the most part, you can just activate it once and it'll just kill most of the things. Now, if you want to min-max, you don't really want to be spamming the ability super hard until you get a good amount of resource cost reduction, and that is because your damage is actually tied to the amount of mana that you have. So, starting right off, in terms of the skills and the points, I'm just going to go over this kind of fast. Just check the pinned comment as well as in the description box. It'll have everything that you need. I'll mention anything that is kind of important in here, but a lot of the stuff is just min-maxing on just getting as much defense as possible, because we don't need to scale a bunch of other skills. I'm just kind of putting it right into Fireball, as well as a different set of buffs. Like for example, Inner Flames, more damage when we're healthy. Crippling Flames is actually really good. The chance to immobilize the enemy, if you get bonus damage to crowd control, or just applying this, can be quite nice in general. Because there is, of course, any of the things where you get bonus damage to crowd control, or if you get bonus damage to like stun, frozen, this is kind of nice for that reason. And if you do want to throw in like Penitent Greaves, it can kind of help out having the target stuck there, and then you can just apply whatever, you know, freeze to the enemy. It's not going to really go anywhere. It's really awesome for basically grouping up the enemies with the Snake ultimate, which is Inferno, and then you can freeze them in place, immobilize them, and then they're just going to be stuck there even after the snake ends. But usually by the time the snake is done, everything is gone anyways, because you get that giant AoE explosion with this build. But we're also putting in warmth over here, so extra heals, extra burn damage, so you get increased burning damage for enemies each second they remain burning. This one might be something that if you want to, you can kind of skip out on, but you need to get warmth just because it's extra free HP. Why not? Fairy Surge is great. That's how we kind of maintain our mana. And then for the final key passive, we're running Essu's Ferocity. So how it works in Diablo now is we have our crit multi heavily nerfed, right? We only get 50%. Now this is an X multiplier, so I'm not actually sure how it registers. There's going to be a lot of things where I want to test out when we get the test dummy. We are going to be getting a test dummy in the game, and this will really help out to see which one is actually better. So Essu's Ferocity will allow you to get basically 50% increased attack speed, which is crazy with one of the aspects. It also applies extra 5% crit strike chance when they're lower than a certain amount of life, but against enemies above 50% life, it's a multiplier crit multi of 25, which is good. It's not just regular crit multi, this is the multiplicative one, okay? And then again, Combustion, it was something that I could consider maybe something we can take a look at. Again, I want to wait for the DPS dummy to give you guys a really good build, because like Lightning Hydra I already know is really good, and this was something that I discovered, and a lot of you guys were like, dude, this build is insane, give us the build, and I'll give it to you guys right now. Usually I try to give you guys like level 100 builds after I've like tested them, but I can tell you this is going to be insane for sure, unless they nerf it within the next few days. This is going to be an absolute crazy build. So let's go over the items. So I don't have Shaco obviously in the gameplay, I'm level 73, but I'm trying to give you guys some of the ideas on what you may want to look for. So getting maximum life, cooldown reduction, extra resource is great in your helmet. So getting plus mana is going to be good. This is more so in the min-max department, but if you can't get Shaco, obviously Shaco is the best in slot. And then we have Aspect of Fortune, so we want to scale lots of lucky hit, because we need it for our resource in order to maintain high resource, so we actually get way more damage. Then we've got Gloves of the Illuminator, already mentioned this, this is really important, it just lets the fireballs bounce. And then Tibalt's Will, more damage once we activate Teleport. It's probably the best pair of pants in the game, and it also gives you maximum resource, which is kind of a thing that normally does not roll on pants, which is really awesome. So this one is great. And then Essu's Heirloom, because we want to scale crit damage and crit strike chance. And then Aspect of Ancient Flame. So Estus Ferocity, this is why I take it over the other one currently. It's just a massive up to 50% increased attack speed. Crazy. And then we're running Elementalist Aspects if we can. And the gameplay, I'm not running this, by the way. I haven't min-max. I'm always going to give you guys the best advice because, you know, I haven't gotten certain items. Just get unlucky, right? Elementalist Aspect is insane, though. It gives us, because it's on an amulet, 60% increased crit strike chance as long as we have 100 mana. And you'll see that the mana right now isn't absolutely perfect. It'll be really good. Like, we just activate our spells, and it's still basically maintaining high mana, which is great. So, yeah, Elementalist Aspect is great for that. Also, the Staff of Endless Rage does help out with this for sure, in terms of managing mana, because Gloves Illuminator give us extra mana on a lucky hit. That's why we want to scale a lot of lucky hit. And then Incendiary Aspect, we have a lucky hit. Damage from the Pyromancy has a chance to restore some mana. This is awesome. And then we're also considering X-Falls. This is something I haven't tested yet, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be the best in slot. What this does is it gives us the ability to make it so our damage over time effects have a chance to erupt, dealing a set amount of damage of the same type. So we get to actually activate our fire damage again, which is going to be crazy, and I cannot wait. Once I get this, guys, there's going to be some sort of stuff that is going to go down in the history of Diablo that we might not get this kind of level of power again. And then for our offhand running Aspect of the 3 curses. This is pretty crazy. So what this does is it makes it so we're going to increase the crit strike damage of Meteor and Fireball, and this is X 20 to 40, but it's doubled against healthy enemies, meaning the first time that we hit the enemy, that's 80 extra X multiplicative crit multi, which is crazy. And I don't even have this in the gameplay, which makes me super excited to actually drop this build, because this one, again, I had 100% plans to play Hydra, Chain Lightning, and I still will make that build, but this build is just like crazy that it's this strong even without some of these things. Next up, we're actually running Amethyst. The reason why is we actually do want damage over time, because it's going to consume that damage over time. We want that number to be higher versus getting just basically additive crit damage. And then Ruby, Diamond, nothing's too special with that. We're running Ravenous for extra attack speed, and then Domination over here, enemies that are immobilized, so that will apply with our one of our like masteries where it can immobilize the target. And then Prey on the Weak, giving us the ability to get more vulnerable damage, and also it's going to have the ability to apply vulnerability and more vulnerable damage, which is great. So we don't even have to have like something that applies vulnerability, which is awesome. And a Curse Touch over here, they have a chance to get hit with a Vampiric Curse, and this is how we are applying vulnerability. So this applies the curse, and then cursed enemies are vulnerable. And then we have Flowing Veins. This is what makes this whole build work, and this is how it was accidentally discovered. So 60% increased damage over time to enemies, and this is multiplicative. So good, and we're going to be just inflicting Vampiric Curse, so it's very easy to maintain. This thing is just crazy, and this is why this build works, is because normally you wouldn't just get 60 extra, amount of dot damage, and because we are already applying 23% of our damage as dot, we're getting that kind of extra, and then with the bonus of the Fireball with one of the nodes, we get where it does the burning damage as direct damage, and it counts as direct. Direct damage is actually important in this game to activate a lot of different things, because it will activate if you deal direct damage to an enemy, X happens. I'm not sure if this can actually scale a second hit on the enemy to actually activate another lucky hit. Again, we're going to have to test this out when the DPS dummies come out, but this build is just going to be crazy. So we went over the itemization. Now let's go over the Paragon. So the Paragon board is very, 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 very important to copy this exact. It's literally so important that it's basically exactly like this, with the exception of if you need 5 willpower instead of intelligence, go on. Because this build has no room for any swaps, because if you really want to min-max on this, yeah. I'm just going to go over this kind of fast, because more than likely you guys are just going to visit the website anyway. So we're going to be running Unleash for extra mana on the starter board, and then we're going to go into Searing Heat with Pyromaniac, and then we are going to go into Enchanter, Master, Elementalist, over here, and then we are going to go into Elemental Summoner with Flame Feeder. And then we are going to go into Frigid Fate, and we are going to get Enchanter. We're basically scaling a lot of the non-physical damage, because all these newer changes give us damage that normally would be for let's say cold skills, but it just applies your damage to vulnerable enemies is equal to the amount of your bonus to cold, with a maximum up to 30x. So basically, if we have 300% non-physical, that actually applies and gives us max value on every single thing, which makes Sorceress super strong this season. But on top of that, we are going to finally go into Burning Instinct for our very final one, which gives us extra burn damage percent, which is multiplicative x 10% of our critical strike damage, plus 1% multiplicative for every 75 intelligence we have, and on average getting 750 intelligence. You can't like mess that up. So you get a minimum of 10%. It can go up a little bit more. You can get about 1,000 int if you want to look to min-max on intelligence, but that's going to go ahead and wrap it up. But I also will include you guys for the gameplay, because my gameplay doesn't have all the Paragon boards. For all intents and purposes of being as thorough as possible, just so you guys see exactly the same thing. We originally, again, we're going Hydra, and this is kind of an accidental discovery, and this is what we are currently running. I only have literally one glyph. Like, wait until we fully max out this build. It's going to be insane. But check the pin, but just, again, providing this so you guys at least have what I was using during the gameplay. We're level 73, but this build, constantly while I was streaming, it was just like, dude, how are you doing this much damage? And I mean, I've been breezing through content, literally just activating Fireball once and moving, and most of the time everything dies, with the exception of like if it has that like damage resistance aura, which the thing is kind of nasty. It doesn't let you like really one shot very consistently, but it's a very, very easy build, super smooth. But yeah, just get Glows Illuminated. That's the only thing that is kind of required for this build to kind of function at a higher level. You could definitely play without it, because you would just spam Fireball, but you would kind of run out of resource. And if you don't happen to have the resource generation, feel free not to run the Elementalist aspect. Again, in the gameplay, I do not have the Elementalist aspect, nor do I have the aspect of 3 curses. So I'm missing out on a multiplicative crit, and on top of that, I'm missing out on the flat like 60% crit strike chance, which again, a lot of my pieces of gear are not this at all. But with this build, you get like over 120% crit chance, so you have some room for things not to be absolutely perfect in terms of the rolls. But that's going to wrap things up. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. If you guys have any suggestions for this build, as it's kind of a newer build, it's kind of in like what I would consider in the beta, the testing phase. So we'll make some updates to it. So if you want to see the update to this insane build, hit subscribe, turn the bell, and I'm praying that this doesn't get nerfed before I can get some gameplay of doing the Uber bosses and basically just one rotation deleting them. It's going to be crazy. Anyways, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.